Hello, YouTube. It's your boy, the Passport Bro Wingman, coming at you again with another YouTube video. You see the title of this video. Let's get into this topic. The way this came about was, as you have noticed, if you've been watching a lot of the news and also, reading online and that kind of thing, the issue in New York has gotten really, really severe. Now, this video is not directly about the situation that's happening in New York. It's not directly about the situation that's happening at our southern border, but it does bring up a few questions because I don't know about you guys, but recently, probably over the last like 3 or 4 months, I've actually been in contact with some of the women I used to talk to in Colombia that recently, within like the last month or two, have actually come across the southern border. They're actually here now in the United States. I have been in contact with them a little bit, just trying to catch up on things and, seeing like their situation, that kind of thing. And even then, previous to this, I had been visiting, my girl in Colombia, in Bogota. I've been visiting there, and there's been lots and lots of talks about people coming to the border. Every now and then I'll meet someone and they'll tell me that they're saving up money to, uh, you know, pretty much make a trip, pay a coyote, or make their way up, towards the border. One woman had told me about taking like the caravan and making her way towards the border. And so it just got me thinking a lot about this question. Well, right now, this might be a little somewhat controversial, because the whole border situation is a very touchy situation. Um, on one end, one person could say, does Biden have open borders? But on the other end, some people trying to say, no, everything is under control. It's not really the issue. I kind of steer more in the direction of it almost looks like it's open borders for the most part. For the most part, they are allowing people to check themselves in at the border, claim asylum. They can just get into the country. In many cases now, I saw they do the whole catch and release thing. They give them like a ticket. They're supposed to appear at their court date. They let them off into the United States. There have been even cases where there were so many people at the border, they just pretty much let them in to California. And here's the thing. The thing is, I'm not put it this way. I'm not trying to make this a whole Republican versus Democrat type of thing, and I'm not trying to really stir up a lot of the political issue. Going back to the main point of this video, it begs to differ. You know, if it's that easy now to get into the country, what kind of trickle down effect does that have for the rest of South America, where literally now you have people literally making plans to come to the border, and in many cases, because either, in my personal opinion, either Trump or DeSantis is about to they're about to get into office. Now, once they get into office, they're going to shut the border. Anybody that's here, there's going to be lots and lots of deportation. So I feel like a lot of people now are kind of encouraged to, if they ever wanted to make it to America, if they ever wanted to either cross over legally or just go through the asylum seeking pathway, this is probably like the last opportunity that they really have to get into the country before things get really, really strict. As a result, there's a lot of incentive in South America for people who have the money and means to make their way towards the border. Even in some cases, people who don't have the means, what they're doing is putting their money together, and they're doing things like in caravans. There is a jungle, right? I believe it's in Panama, between like Panama and what's the other country nearby? But anyway, it goes from Colombia to Panama to Mexico. So a lot of people are going through that gap there. And here's the thing: the United States and Panama, they know about this gap, but of course, America's put pressure on them to close it. But you find out later that actually some of the people in Colombia were actually making money off allowing people to go through the gap and head their way towards the United States. Even people in Mexico, they have like little, not organizations, but little small businesses where they kind of help them navigate through the jungle pretty much in Panama. And they make some money off of that. And I say that to say all this. in many cases, there's going to be lots and lots of migrants leaving Colombia, leaving Brazil, um, leaving Peru, Ecuador, and it begs to differ. Like, if with all these people fleeing, what is that going to do for like the data market there? As far as like the talent there, as far as like the quality of girls, what would that do to the male to female ratio? Also, like, does that throw off the dynamics as far as one of the biggest things is, as we always had talked about, is that women in general tend to be hypergamous. So let's just say, like, a lot of passport bros, you go down to South America where like your money is. Let's say, like, for example, Colombia. Currently, right now, you can get about almost 4,000 Colombian pesos for $1. So let's say you go down there, you're down there, you're living a life, you got your own apartment, you're living well. But keep in mind now that leverage to some degree may not be the same. You might not have as much as the same appeal as you may have once had, because let's say, like, because before, okay, you are this foreign exotic American guy coming down to Colombia, and there's always the appeal of you can somewhat give them a better life. But the thing now is how true is that now, seeing that a lot of those women, some even the guys now can, like, pretty much make their way towards the border and get into the country and get their work permit, get their work authorization, start working. So in many cases, the appeal there as being like this, almost like rich American, may not be there anymore to some degree. That's the question. That's what I kind of wanted to bring up in this video. That's why I labeled it, are the passport bros ruined by the border crisis? With so many people heading towards the border, of which a lot of them being some of the beautiful women that South America has to offer, with a lot of them heading towards the border, will passport bros have the same appeal that they once had before this whole situation with the border? Now, now I have my own personal opinion. I have my own answers. I'm going to go into that, but I wanted to just at least frame the question and get you thinking in your mind where my mind was going with this whole thing. So here's the thing. A few things about this. So let's talk about. Well, first let's talk about this. One of the fear, well, not when you say like a fear, but one of the issues some guys always have had about bringing your girls back to the state is, they would say, if you bring a girl back to the state, the feminism there, the toxic culture there is going to pretty much for the most part, ruin her. It's going to change her personality. She's going to try to, for the most part, become Americanized, want to become this modern woman who wants to work all the time, wants to level up and that kind of thing. So you have that. So the thing is, it makes you wonder if, once a lot of those women who traveled up towards the border, once they enter into the country, are a lot of those women are going to become Americanized. And here's the thing. A percentage will, but not the whole percentage. As I stated before in many of my videos, if you notice, a lot of times when couples come over into the border and they're married, let's say they come from Mexico, those couples typically stay together. And as I said before, statistically, those families are more stable than American families, even though those families came directly from Mexico and they went up into America. Keep in mind, a lot of times when foreigners come here, they tend to stay in their own enclave, whether it's people from Haiti, people from Mexico, people from Colombia, from Venezuela. Right now, I'm in the Florida area. There's a whole Venezuelan community, and a lot of times, when this is before DeSantis put this law into place, but either way, there was a big community there where a lot of times when a lot of the migrants would come, they actually would go into their communities of people who come from similar backgrounds. So that being said, a lot of times, even when they come in the country, they still have their culture intact, which is why in many cases, in my personal opinion, I don't know if you encountered a lot of foreigners in America as far as like from South America, but in many cases, they still tend to be a little bit, I would say a lot better than as far as dating quality than some of the American women. Because of their mindset, they still come from a patriarchal background. So in many cases, when you interact with them, it's not put it this way. If you were going to marry someone in America, I still think that they still would be a pretty good choice. Not as good as they would have been if you would have met them back in their home country where they're in a less toxic situation. But I say that to say that when more of those women flooding coming into the border and coming into the country, I don't think necessarily that's necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think that might actually improve the dating market in the United States because you'll have that cultural influence of a lot of women coming from patriarchal background coming into the United States. And plus that provides more wives for the guys here. As I said before in one of my previous videos, they were saying about 30% of men had not had sex within, I want to say like the last like 2 years. And that's because, as you know, a lot of the women here have like such high standards and such like, just their mentality is not wife material. So with more women from South America coming into the country, not necessarily a bad thing. Now, on the other hand, is it bad because there's less talent now in South America because a lot of that talent has come to the United States? But keep in mind that if there's more talent in the United States and these are quality women, there may be less passport bros because there'll be less reason for some guys to travel because they already have a pool of women here that would be of pretty good quality. Because keep in mind, even though they come into the United States, it's not like they come here and now they're making $100 an hour, $30 an hour, and that kind of thing. With the exception of course, in New York or LA, is because the cost of living there is just extremely high. But what I'm trying to say is, keep in mind when they come to the country, they still have to wait about 6 months before they can get work authorization. And even then, if you know, for example, $30 might sound like a lot to you, but imagine $30 an hour in New York or like some parts of Los Angeles. That's not really anything. You really need about Los Angeles. You got to be making almost like over $100K to be living very comfortably. The same thing with like New York. So $30 an hour, while that sounds good, and though in that part of the country, maybe not the best. And also keep in mind that a lot of the migrants that are coming, a lot of these are men. If you notice in a lot of pictures, you don't really see that many women. You do here and there, you'll see like a family and they'll show a woman with some children. But in many cases, in my personal opinion, this is just them trying to play on the strings of a lot of Americans and make it seem as if all the migrants are just these women, bunch of women with children. But what you notice is a bunch of men. And a lot of those men, when they come here, what they're doing is they're working and they're sending their money back home. They're not really, put it this way, they're living here to gather money that they're sending back home to like their children and their wives and that kind of thing. When I used to work at McDonald's a long time ago in Florida, and I worked with a lot of foreigners from like Ecuador, Peru. A lot of times, a lot of them would have husbands back home. They would have children back home, and they would work here. They would take the money and they would send it through Western Union, MoneyGram, and send it to their family back then. So in many cases, it's almost like they're still linked to their country. They're not complete. They're just here more so to work. Sometimes you have foreigners that come here on visas, they work, so forth, and then they go back for a few months. Then they come back into the country. And I said it to say that although right now it's almost like open borders, keep in mind that for one, everyone can't necessarily come through the border. Everyone can, we can't take all of South America. We're not going to take all of Mexico. And then two, keep in mind that even if some talent does leave to go towards the border, keep in mind one of the fears and one of the talking points that our detractors have always said is that these women only want you for their green card. They only want you for the border. The way I look at this is, this actually purifies the market in South America, because if there's any woman that just wants to use an American citizen just for their green card, right now they're probably headed towards the border, which means when you go to Colombia, a lot of women that you encounter there, when you're in Colombia, Brazil, these are women who plan to stay in Brazil. These are not women who are necessarily trying to get a green card or going to the border. So in a sense, all this did was really filter out all the women who are just trying to use you for green cards, because if they want to just get a green card, Biden right now has to. All they got to do is really go in and claim asylum and turn themselves in. And in many cases, if you be honest, a lot of these asylum claims, these are not really true claims. Once and it, and people will say, well, then why would they? Because the thing is, once they come into the country, some of them are going to go back in to their court dates, but a big percentage of them, I don't think they're going to come back. They're just going to kind of, like I said, find a little enclave where they can kind of work, that kind of thing. But I don't see them coming back, unless they happen to get called or deported, that kind of thing. But for the most part, what I'm trying to say is I don't really think the border crisis is that big of an issue. For one, as I said before, if anything, it filters out the women in South America that will be trying to use you for a green card, because those women could easily just save up a little money, come to Mexico, turn themselves into the border, and they'll be fine there. So the women that you do see in Colombia, Brazil, that you do date, you do encounter, you do hang out with, those are going to be women who generally don't want to leave the country. They want to stay in their country. They probably, in many cases, especially if you're not dealing with a P4P girl, they generally are girls who are like, it might be a girl who's a dentist. It might be a girl who works at like a bakery. She may have family here. She may have like a mother that she looks after. But, there's a lot of women currently right now in Colombia who are enrolled in college. They might be a teacher. They might be, working for like the governor or that kind of thing. But either way, what I'm trying to say is, even though they get paid less, it doesn't mean that their countries are less functional, or that like people are not able to, in some cases, to make ends meet. It's just the fact that, unfortunately, in a lot of countries such as like Colombia, Brazil, there is severe poverty in which, there have been many people who have been like jobless, who not work for long periods of time. They have families and so forth. There was I believe a big percentage of like the elderly that pretty much was homeless. They didn't have anybody to care for them. So a lot of times, a lot of migrants, a lot of times it's people there that almost have, put it this way, if they don't leave to some degree, it's not much there for them. So in many cases, they kind of are somewhat forced to come towards the border. Now, of course, there are people who are abusing, and we do know that is true. People who just, they don't, for whatever reason, they look at America as the golden ticket. So for that reason, they could have perfectly came from a decent family in Colombia where they had decent money, but they want to make more money. So they're just coming towards the border, and they're going to, do like an asylum claim. But even though it's not technically asylum, because technically asylum means that you're being persecuted because of your background, whether it's because of your religion or your race or that kind of thing. If you look at how many people coming towards the border, all of these people are not being persecuted within their countries. Now, there are some severe situations in which you may have a person, like I know somebody personally, that some gangs took over the neighborhood. They kicked them out the house. They told them if they didn't leave, they were going to harm them. And as a result of that, this person, this is a girl. She took her kids, and she's recently let me know that she was coming towards the border because she was trying to get away from the crime there. So there are some legitimate claims, but the whole purpose of the video was not necessarily to talk about directly the border crisis, politics, or what you think of Biden, or what you think about Republican, Democrat. It was just more so about a growing concern about, how will this border crisis impact, the talent in Colombia? Does this make passport bros less effective, like less a movement? Because now maybe the ratio of women to men might not be the same. Maybe there's more men. Maybe there's less, women open to dating foreigners there, because maybe a lot of them have left towards the border. And keep in mind, a lot of times the ones who really migrated from like, Colombia, Peru, that kind of thing, a lot of them, are coming from like Venezuela, Guatemala, that kind of thing, where, especially like Venezuela, where like the economy is just so bad there, there's so much inflation, it's not really somewhat unbearable. So you have no choice but to pretty much leave in many cases. So that's where like a lot of them like are coming from. Now, in the case of like some of these other countries, like I said before, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, that kind of thing. Things might be a little bit more stable there. Now, again, it is poverty. It's lots of poverty. I'm not saying that it's the best place that you want to be, but it's enough where there's enough people that want to stay there. In that case, I have been there recently, and in spite of this, I mean, I didn't really see that much of a difference, to be honest with you. To me, everything still seemed about um same as like always, but you did hear more talk about, especially when I interacted with some of the, with some girls there, I did hear lots of talk about people saving up to head towards the border and that kind of thing. And be honest with you, obviously, as I said before, there's talk right now between Congress as far as border security and that kind of thing, which means it's not going to last that long. And even for the people that did get into the country, sadly, even the ones that saved their money up, used the coyotes and that kind of thing, and came into the country, as I said before, sadly, as you start to see, even Mayor Adams is turning back a lot of his talk about sanctuary cities and that kind of thing, which means eventually that's all going to fall apart. And as I said before, when this next election happens, unfortunately, a lot of people that did come in, a lot of them are going to wind up getting deported, and it's going to be a pretty rough situation for a lot of people, But yeah, but either way, here's one last thing to take into account. As I said before, majority of the people that are going towards the border, a lot of these are males, which means they're actually going to be less, in some cases, less males in South America. In some cases, because a lot of times, a lot of the women, like a lot of these women's boyfriends and husbands, they took the trip to America to get these jobs, working construction and so forth, to send money back. So, and actually, in many cases, it might actually have helped passport bros in some sense. So that's my overall take about this whole situation. I don't think it's going to have any real negative effects on the passport bros movement. I think it's still on and popping for the passport bros. We're still winning. And it's just going to be slight dynamic shift in which to our favor, in which now there's less. You're going to deal with less women. There's going to be less of a worry as far as if a woman is there directly trying to use you for your passport, because again, if they're about just getting a passport and citizenship, they can easily just go towards the border. In my opinion, it actually makes it easier for you, many cases. So, yeah, so I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to kind of bring this topic up. I just thought it was a very interesting topic to kind of think about. But you guys, let me know what you think about this whole situation in the comments. Do you think the border crisis will have effect on the passport bro movement? What do you think is going to happen with the border crisis? Like, do you think it will get worse? It will continue? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that this crisis is going to affect the talent in South America? Is there no more Colombia, Cartagena? Is that all over? Should we now all just shift our focus towards, going to Africa, going to Thailand, countries away from like the American border for the most part? Should we focus more on that? Like, what do you guys think is going to be the overall effect? And I'm going to leave it at that. This has been I didn't want this to be such a long video, but it was something I kind of wanted to talk about a bit. So, yeah, so please subscribe to my channel if you have not. Hit the thumbs up, hit the notification bell for my next video. I'm going to try to start putting out a little bit more. I've just been very, very busy with work. And until next time, this is your boy, the Passport Bro Wingman, signing off.
Dear Passport Boys, dear Passport Bros, stop calling yourself Passport Boys and Passport Bros. Are you going to the Philippines to look for a Filipina queen or what? So stop calling yourself Passport Boys and Passport Bros. Start calling yourself Passport Kings.